Hey, everybody. It's Mark Masters. It's Always Bookin Comedy. Another Monday night. We're doing it. We're here with Nick Scarpino out of the Bay Area. Yeah, he's here. Nick, cool
Hello.
backdrop. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's talk. Are those fancy lights? We're going to talk about lighting today.
We can talk about, yeah.
You live in San Francisco?
I'm in San Francisco, yeah.
San Francisco. Awesome.
Yep.
What a great comedy scene. Super fun. You got the Punchline. You got Cheaper Than Therapy.
We got Cobbs. We got the setup. Yeah, we have Don't Tell up here. A lot of Don't Tell shows up here as well. So
Nice.
yeah, I love the scene. It's fantastic.
Amazing. What's the setup? I haven't heard of that one.
The setup is just another great independent show. It's run by Abhay Nadkarni and Richard Sarvate, and they run shows in LA. Yeah, they run shows in LA and in San Francisco, and probably I think a couple other parts of the country as well. Nice. And I have the privilege of working with those guys sometimes and helping them produce and host some of their shows. And it's really fun. Yeah.
All right. We got a note from North Carolina. Mark in North Carolina. Hello. Good to have you here. If you have questions about lighting or San Francisco or really anything, Nick knows his stuff. How to groom a beard. Fire away.
It's a lifelong endeavor.
How long you been doing comedy, Nick?
I'm coming up on, I think, 7 years of comedy next year. Yeah,
I've
been doing this for a while. And it's difficult to gauge, though, of course, because you know we all had that little pandemic happen that I feel like set everyone back a couple of years. But I was really into it when I first started. It dipped a little bit right before the pandemic, and then right when we came out of there, it sort of strengthened my resolve, which is where I really got serious about it. So if you look at my comedy career pre-pandemic, it's very much one foot in, one out, or as some of my best friends would describe me, I was a bit of a hobbyist, which was much to the chagrin of a lot of hardworking comics in our scene, because as you know, stage time is hard to come by. And if you've got someone that's, potentially not looking at making this his career or passion or art form, then you got to sort of clear your way for other people who want to do that. And so I was very aware of that coming out of the pandemic, especially when I saw people, running shows in parking structures or on top of parking structures. And then we started doing parklet shows. And I was like, wow, you know what? Like, you got to really want this during the best of times. And it's a gut check moment if you're willing to do this outside in the freezing cold and maybe get a potentially deadly virus. So that was when I did a show at a place called Milk Bar, and it was outdoors. That was one of my first outdoor shows. It was that. And then I did a Santa Cruz show that was on top of a parking lot where instead of laughing, people would just flash their lights and honk their horn at you.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I think I really love this. And I think I owe it to myself and to the rest of the people in my scene whom I love to be a good comic, or at least put my all into it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you run any shows yourself before the pandemic when you were like 1 foot in, 1 foot out? As you
Pre-pandemic, no. And I think that was a bit of not a mistake, but that was definitely one of those, like, I liked going to mics, and all my friends who immediately when they started going to mics and I made friends with them, they immediately started booking shows. And I never really saw the merit of that until I saw them sort of start to excel a little bit in the scene, because they could book other comics and learn from them. And, realistically, if those other comics just happen to book a show, well, then if they saw you do good and you booked them and your show was good, then maybe they'll book you for your show. And then all of a sudden, all my friends started getting all these really great sets at all these places. Meanwhile, I'm still like chasing 4 mics down every night. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I not getting good enough stage time like everyone else? And it was just because they were being more strategic about it, but also because they had skin in the game. Because as you know, producing stuff is a different world of anxiety and, depression, especially when you're barking people in, desperately trying to get.
Tell me that. I got to show this Friday. We've sold 14 tickets. It's a 90-seater, and I'm biting my nails.
That's comedy. I don't know how it is where you are, but in San Francisco, people don't buy comedy tickets.
It's always last minute.
Absolutely. Always last minute. Sure, we want to go out.
Like, I mean, at this point, I'd say we're going to be lucky to have 30 people at that show. And so it's not going to be that one is not going to be the best, but yeah. So I definitely know what you're saying in terms of nail biters. That's funny. That reminds me, there was something I definitely wanted to talk about on tonight's show. I might come back around to it. It's something about my show running, but I want to talk more about this show running stuff, but let's take a quick diversion into the mics. You were talking about hitting 3 to 4 mics. I don't know if that was a night or a week. What's the Bay Area mic scene like? Can you hit a mic every night?
Yeah, we used to have a lot of mics. I don't hit the mics as hard as I used to, unfortunately. But back when I first started, on a Monday night, you could easily hit 3. You could do Brainwash, you could do Mission Hill Saloon, and then you could do, there was always one other floating mic or show you could try to go pick up time at. And so that was always really fun because San Francisco is not that big of a city, you know. We pretend like we're a big city, but we're no Manhattan, right? You can get from one corner of San Francisco to the other on a Monday night in like 10, 15 minutes. Okay. So if you're ripping it around with 3 comics, or if you're being strategic and you've got a couple comics who maybe went to one mic, you didn't go to that, you went to the other one, maybe their name just so happens to show up on a list that you're on and vice versa, then you guys can, which I never did, of course. I never did that, of course. I would never. But that just so happened to be sort of how that would go. And so I think even now, actually, I think our mics are great now because I think you could find a mic Friday and Saturday, which was always the litmus of how badly do people want it. Like, can I go out on a Saturday night if I don't have a show and just go like, I just want to try something for 3 or 5 minutes.
And are these mics where you're like getting up, you're just basically going through the motions, practicing being on stage and telling jokes to other comics, or there are audiences at some of these mics?
Most of them are just comics. I mean, we have a great club here called The Function. It was started by the hella funny guys, namely Stroy Moyd. And they have a pretty good track record so far. I think they just started a few months back, but they got a pretty good track record of doing a show and then doing a mic right afterward and retaining like 20 or 30 people, which might sound, if you're new to comedy, you might be like, what the heck are you gonna do with that? But like, if there's 10 people there that are just like ready to sit through 10 minutes of open mic or, 2 hours of open mic material, I mean, give them a reward.
God bless
them. Give them an award, give them something, free drinks or something, because they need it.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, cool. What's your favorite mic in San Francisco, dead or alive?
Dead or alive? I mean, the short answer, my favorite and my least favorite mic were the Brainwash. Those were always, the Brainwash is the most like probably storied mic that's ever been, at least in my time.
Does it still exist?
No, unfortunately, it does not. And it actually didn't get killed by the pandemic. It got killed by greedy landlords, which is actually the older story in San Francisco. But this place used to be down on Folsom Street in Soma, and it was not in a great part of town, but not in the worst part of town, which I feel like all lends itself to perfectly to comedy. Like, you don't want to be too bougie. Like, nobody does comedy in Beverly Hills, right?
Do you remember a mic in a place called like the Dugout, maybe, and it had a bunch of baseball bats on the ceiling?
That was incredible. That was actually, I think, down the street from the Brainwash. I think it's on Folsom.
Okay. Yeah. That mic, like the room was so awesome because it was like a bullpen, like not like a baseball analogy, but like, like a long, narrow thing, and it had low ceilings and the laughs just ricocheted. It was really cool.
Well, Brainwash was not. Brainwash was half cafe that looked like it was a cyber cafe from the 90s and half laundromat. Okay. And so if you bombed, I'll never forget the first time I went up, I bombed, of course, because it was my first time, even though I thought I was going to do the best you've ever seen in your life, because of course I'm a natural. But I ate it so hard that I remember hearing someone taking their warms out of the dryer. Like, I remember specifically, like, the sound of a zipper hitting the metal part of a dryer. I remember hearing that and being like, wow, this is really hard.
Hear the quarters going in.
Yeah. I was like, what are we doing?
That's wild.
Yeah.
So how would it, like, that's interesting. Where was the stage area or what?
They put up a little stage in the little cafe area, but it was split. It was 2 big rooms. One was a cafe with like a little, a bar counter area that you can order from, with a kitchen in the back that I'm pretty sure did not pass any sort of health regulations ever. Okay. And then the other side of it, probably 2/3 of it, were the washer and dryers. And so you had a built-in audience of people who were doing their laundry, which was kind of nice, as well as some people who would be like reading and stuff. So you could get
that is kind of cool.
But more importantly,
be nice if you went to a laundromat and there was a comedy show going on.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the comedy, sure. But it ended up being nice because that was the 6 o'clock mic. So that was, I believe, Brainwash started like 6 or 6:15. So every comic would go there to try to get their name on the list. And it was run by Tony Sparks and the hella funny guys. And every once in a while, you'd be able to, if you got there early, you'd get up like 10th, and it'd be pretty fun because you'd have some comics kind of paying attention. But for the most part, the reason I loved it and hated it was because if you were 20th, they used to bump people a lot for their friends. And so if you were 20th, you weren't going on till midnight. And midnight or 11 o'clock at a laundromat on Folsom Street for one other comic who's the host, who's barely just struggling to hold on, that's sad. That was not a fun reality. So that was my love and hate. And then we used to do a mic at OMG, which was another famous bar. That was a Sunday night mic, and I used to go to that mic every night before Punchline, before the Sunday showcase.
That one looks like a dance club. kind of
it's
in
a
a
dance club.
sketchy area. Yeah, I went to that mic
sketchy.
actually
Yeah.
pre-pandemic.
And Rakesh, my friend Rakesh used to run that, and unfortunately it closed down, I think, just due to some financial hardships. But it is a wild place on the weekends. Let's just say comedy is not what it's known for.
Okay.
Being in that particular area, but a lot of fun stuff probably happened there when I wasn't there. Right. But when I was there, it used to be Bomb City. But I loved it because it was at 6:00, and you could go there and just hear your voice come out of a mic before you went to the Sunday showcase, because you didn't know if you were going to go up that night. So I always did sort of like a warm up, shake off the rust set, because of course I wasn't actually doing shows Friday and Saturday. I was just doing mics all the way. Maybe I had a spot someplace that I could go to, but more often it was like, when you first start off, you're lucky if you get one show a week.
Okay, cool. So we'll circle back to that Sunday night showcase in a little bit. Let's talk about show running a little bit. So after the pandemic, you're a little more motivated. What show running is a pain in the ass, as we've talked about. We can get into why and the details, but why would somebody want to run a show? Why would Nick Scarpino in San Francisco want to run a show?
Well, I think it's incredibly good. If you want to be a comic, let's back up. If you ever I studied film in school, and by film, I mean film theory, but I did watch a lot of YouTube videos. And so one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got is that if you want to be a really good director, you should edit your own stuff. You should see what the final product looks like, so you can be so pissed off at the person that shot it, and then know that you only have yourself to blame for it. And I think that goes along the same lines can apply to doing comedy versus running shows. I think you get a lot more empathy for showrunners. I think you understand how hard it is. And the single most important thing of comedy, unfortunately, is to put butts in seats, because you can be the funniest comic on the planet, but if you're performing to absolutely no one, what's the point? So when I started running shows, I started really understanding that was just the other 50% of the industry is finding venues, running shows, getting people through the door, paying your comics, and then not going broke doing it. And so I think it's very, very important. But then it's also incredibly important because honestly, still to this day, you have to create your own stage time. You don't really have, nobody's not, I'm a pretty good comic, but I don't have a line around the block waiting to book me on shows. I have to go out there and I have to make my own stage time for myself. I have to film my own clips. I have to do all these things. And I don't think that's ever going to stop for me until I, knock on wood or IKEA, reach a place where people are booking me as a feature or a headliner. But even then, those are probably going to be few and far between for me for the next 5-10 years. So you have to kind of make your own stage time. And again, I think it's beneficial because not only that, but you can also help promote and give stage time to up and coming comics that you kind of believe in. You can help mentor them a little bit. And then also if there's more established comics that have shows, you guys can hook each other up, which is important.
Yeah. Amazing. That was very well said. I'm impressed. And so those are pretty lofty goals. Did you find that to be true in the first couple of shows, or did it take a while to come around to that?
Well, so the first show I ever ran was actually during the pandemic, and we ran a boat show. So we partnered with Red and White Cruises down at the wharf, who were, struggling. This was right when everything had kind of started to open up, but they only had a license or they only had the ability to do stuff on top of the deck and open air. So it was sort of the same regulations in San Francisco as the parklet shows that we were doing. And so my buddy Austin Carr and I, who was also a great comic, we just went around. We're like, what if we did a show on top of a boat? And so it was an absorbently expensive ticket, but the first 5 we did sold out because people just wanted to get out of their house and be safe, or as safe as they possibly could, and then just be entertained. And so we were literally on the deck of this massive cruise ship, cruising down the bay of San Francisco, right around. And then we kept doing it to the point where when baseball games opened up, you would go into the Oracle Stadium, little, outlet, and you could just sit there and watch the baseball game for a hot second. There was a Green Day concert that happened too at one point. So I was like, well, I'm getting heckled by one of the most famous punk bands ever. But that was really, really cool. But of course, the struggles with that was, we booked some great headliners. We had Ali Makovsky come up. We have Craig Conant come up. We had a bunch of cool people come up and do the show and help push tickets to that. And they were happy to do it as well. But as things started opening more, a $50 ticket became completely and totally untenable. And then you get the reality of the business, not the art form, but the business side of it, which is that the Red and White Cruises take a lot of money to go out, even though they're electric. They have to pay their crew, they have to pay this. So they were like, we need to be either selling out or we need to shut this down, unfortunately. And we had to unfortunately agree. We tried doing it inside, which I loved because it felt like an inside comedy club. That's the background, which is ever shifting. And that ended up, I think, being a better show. But at a certain point, they were like, this is not worth it for us anymore. So I don't know if I answered your question. I forget where we were.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, my question was basically in the beginning, was show running as great as it is now? And it sounds like it was pretty great. That was
it was to begin with. And then we started running a show. Austin and I started running a show at a place called Fish and Farm, which was a cool little basement, maybe 20, 30 seater, right across from Punchline, which was not a great idea. Folks, if you're starting a show, don't do it right across the street from one of the most iconic venues in all of Northern California. People would rather go to that than our show, but we did have some fun shows there. After a certain point, though, it got too hard to bark people in, and so what my partner and I decided to do was kind of bring in another outside group of producers who are actually really good at marketing their shows, and now we run a lot of their shows, book a lot of their shows, but we don't have to bear the burden of what I think is the hardest thing in comedy, which is putting butts in seats.
Yeah. Any tips on putting butts in seats?
I think you really yes, I think you really have to understand, you really, really have to sort of be a savant when it comes to like Google ads, Google optimization, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, all that stuff. And I think you have to exercise every single possible lever you can pull to do that. And it's a long game. So the more shows you do, the better, because the more shows you do, ideally you're getting a big email list. You can blast your email list when big headliners come through, so you can put butts in seats, so you get more people there. But then you really have to understand like how Google ads work, I think, and how, and this is again me, I don't know any of this stuff. I've just sort of seen the people that I know that are really good at this, that anecdotally have shared some insight with me. But when you search things to do or comedy in San Francisco, you want to make sure you're one of the 2 or 3 things that come up first. And that's really, really hard. And you got to spend some money to do that. And so I think it becomes that value proposition of, okay, if I have to spend, I'm just spitballing here, $1,000 a month, okay, to get X amount of seats, how many shows do I need to do that? And then if I only do 1 show per month, it's probably not worth it, because my search engine optimization is not going to be as good as if I did 5 shows per week, right? Because that more people are hitting it, so Google's feeding it, and then you can afford more. So you start getting into that sort of like, I think, sort of a cascading effect where as you're making more money, like most companies do, you reinvest that money into all your shows, so you get more and more people there, and then suddenly you're the number one. Right. And then second, of course, is always just a button to seat is a button to seat, whether they pay it or not. So free tickets, giveaways, Eventbrite, all that stuff. Like, candidly, most shows will overbook their shows because they know that people that pay will show up, and people that don't pay, 50-50 shot. Yeah. But I've had shows where we have a 100-seat venue, and we'll sell 100 tickets, but then we'll give away 30, and 5 will show up from that, or 30 will show up, and we go, uh-oh, let's hope the fire marshal doesn't step in on this one, because we might have a couple too many heads in this.
Right. Let's talk about Punchline a little bit.
Sure.
And Sunday Night Showcase, and how explain how that whole process works.
So for the uninitiated, Punchline Comedy Club is a historic club up here. It's a favorite of pretty much anyone who's come up in the Bay Area or has visited. If you're a big headliner, you did Punchline. It's just a wonderful club. It's a Live Nation club. So it's run by some of the same people who run our other big club, which is Cobb's Comedy Club. But Punchline Cobb's is great too. I love Cobb's as well. But Punchline is a small, maybe 200, 250 seater, really low ceilings. It looks like a comedy club from the 90s, because I don't think they've redone it since the 90s. And it is just a wonderful place. It's the epicenter of comedy for San Francisco and the Bay Area. And so if anyone wants to be a paid regular at a club, if you want to be, you probably want to angle toward, well, all the clubs, obviously, but Punchline is sort of the top of the mountain for us here. That is the goal in your first 3 to 5 to 10 years of comedy, depending on how much you're putting effort into it. But for me, it was always sort of like, the second I heard, oh, Punchline, you can be a paid regular, you can get what's called passed there. I was like, that seems like that's what I should do. I want to do that. That should be my motivating factor toward getting sets, doing mics, getting my ass up, writing new material, whatever I need to do to do that and impress the bookers there and the powers that be. Then that seems like it's a really good goal for 2 reasons. One, because it's cool to be a paid regular at a comedy club. It's awesome. It's what you do when you're a comic. But 2, and more importantly, it's motivating to have something on the calendar every single week that you got to go to. and that is the Punchline Sunday Showcase. So every single Sunday, and I was there last night, dressed as a Christmas tree. Every Sunday at 7:30, we do the Sunday Showcase. It's one of the longest running shows in San Francisco, and every single comic who's available, past or unpassed, if you're an open micer or you're a person that's 30 years in, you come to this, and you might get a chance to go up. Nobody knows who's going to go up ahead of time. Some people get booked, pre-booked if they're coming in out of town. Well, I think they're really good with out-of-towners. So if you reach out ahead of time, they'll, to the bookers, they might give you a set. So you might know ahead of time. But as far as I'm concerned, I never knew whether or not I was going to go up. And that had a tremendous psychological effect on me. Because every single Sunday.
That's one way of putting it. Tremendous. Okay.
Well, it was tremendously motivating, right? Imagine if you knew. If I told you, if I said, Mark, in a month, you and I are going out to the parking lot and we're going to fight.
Okay.
Right? Would you be motivated, more motivated or less motivated to figure out how to fight? If I told you that.
As opposed to what? That we
we're
might
not going to fight at all. If I said, we're just going to go out and talk. If I said to you, we're going to throw hands at each other in 1 week,
sure.
Would you be like, shit, I should probably learn how to at least it's very motivating. And so for to have the Sunday Showcase be there and to know that, hey, if I don't, I might go up.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm going to go up. So I better be prepared. I better be as good as I possibly can be on the day, because I don't know.
What kind of, if you're thrown up there, what kind of length set are we talking about?
Between 5 and 7 minutes. If you're newer, you get 5 with a 1 minute light. You might get 6, you might get 7. People who are more established might get a little bit more time, especially if you're closing out the show. They might give you 10 or 15. Usually I think 10. I think 10 opens the show and 10 closes the show, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But the caveat is you don't even know you're going up until sometimes 2 minutes before you're supposed to go up on stage. So the booker will go around and look around. They keep a list of how long you've been there for. And the way it works is, it's really an opportunity to network with all the comics in the Bay Area, see better comics than you on a weekly basis, and be able to sort of be in that environment for 2 hours every week, because otherwise you probably wouldn't be allowed to do that, especially in an open micer. You're not really going to be like, hi, I did one mic, please let me into this club for free. It's not going to happen, but you do get into the club on Sunday night. So it's a tremendous opportunity for you. But the way it works is you go for a pretty good period of time, and then you might get your first shot to go up. And that starts your sort of development process with heading toward an audition. For me, it took me about 6 years, maybe a little bit longer, before I got my shot. Actually, probably about 7 years now. Yeah.
All right, so just to clarify, every week, more or less, call it 45 Sundays a year, you went to this club.
Yep.
And sat in the back of the club during a show, not knowing if you were going to go up or not. 45 weeks in year 1, 45 weeks in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5,
now
year 6.
All of us had sort of a thing where, like, if you went up, you had to go back the next week, but then you could take the third week off. So it's more like 40 weekends, and you'd miss some of them. And again, they're not that stringent about it, where like if you don't go every single weekend,
but you're going a lot,
but you want to make sure that the people
dedicated. I mean,
it's
a long time.
It's a long time. Now, to be fair, again, I have friends of mine who are very talented, who have passed their audition, gotten their audition in 2 years. It really is. It's like everything else, right? It's the more you put in is what you're going to get out of it.
Okay.
If you're me and you're doing 1 or 2 mics a week, or maybe you're doing 3 one day and then you don't come back for 2 weeks, well, of course, when they see you, you're not going to be. I wasn't good.
Got it.
You got to be good. And I have friends that are just phenoms that are like 6 months in. I think I had one friend that I think was like 8 months in, and now he's pretty much on track to be a regular at the Comedy Store. So
Devontre.
Yeah, it's Devontre.
Devontre rules. Everybody check out Devontre Coleman. He's the best.
Coleman.
He was at Vail Comedy Festival in 2022.
He's unbelievable. I mean, I remember seeing him at an open mic.
No, 2023. Sorry.
I saw him at an open mic at Neck of the Woods, and I was like, it was one of those where his material was so sharp and so good. And I was like, oh, this guy must have moved from another scene, right? There's no way this guy's this good unless he developed in like New York for like 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I've been doing this for like a month. And you just go like, cool. There's just not everything's equal, man. Like some people just have natural tools, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they're just better at cultivating the tools that God gave them than I am. But he has a natural, guys like him, he has a natural stage presence. He's just fun to watch. And then he's also whip smart and has great material to back that up. And so you look at that, you go, what are you going to do?
Sure.
So he got passed fast. My friend Murad Shaki got passed very fast because he's hilarious as well. My friend Janesh got passed really fast. We've had recently my friend Ian just got passed. But those guys, you know, they're just, it is what it is, you know, whether they're smarter or better at performing or just
Ian's last name like Langland or something.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I think he's on in 2 weeks, everybody. Come back and tune in.
He's hilarious too. Great guy. These are all great guys. And so, you know, I can't fault them, even though I'm supremely jealous of their success. Yeah. But you know, so that there is that, right? Those guys went and they put their time in and they just happened to, you know, whatever they were doing outside of Punchline was working. And so they got passed faster than me. That's just how it
goes. So what happens that 6th year or whatever, when you get selected? Like, tell us about that night.
So once you've
they have expecting it.
You'll get booked on. So you'll start to feel like, okay, I'm starting to get a little traction and starting to get a little attention from the powers that be, the bookers. And there's 3 bookers who help book that show. And, you know, they talk and they go, okay, he did pretty good this time. And then so you might get a Cobb's showcase, which we do showcases there on Wednesdays at Cobb's. So you might be able to go perform there. And then once you they go, okay, we've seen enough from you. They'll give you a guest set on a Tuesday show where you can go during a real show, not a showcase. And they see how you do there. And then if you do well, so I got a call. They were like, hey, do you want to do 5 minutes on, I think it was either 5 or 7 minutes on the Tuesday show. And I was like, I would love to, of course. So I did a guest spot there. And then they were like, cool. And then I got an email that was like, okay, how does 3 weeks work from now for hosting the Tuesday show for your audition? And you say yes, unless, you know, your mom's in the hospital. You say yes, you know, and that was, I mean, to use my fighter's analogy, and there's an analogy that people have, like when they do tournaments and stuff for fighting, is like there's never like from the time you sign up for something like that to the time it happens, every single moment you get to train or to do mics or to do anything like that is like 10x as important and is impactful for you, because you go, crap, I got to do all, you just pack it all in and you're just laser focused. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to treat this like it's a fight. I need to train for this. I need to do as many 15-minute sets as I possibly can. And I need to basically like really kind of lean on all my friends and all my relationships that I've built, my friends that run shows, my shows. Can I get 15 minutes? Can I stack all of them? And I think I stacked like maybe 10 sets up leading up to that, including a couple doubles in the night and then one right before. And the virtue of that is that you come in obviously feeling the time and understanding what it's going to be like. But also because, you know, your average set, I don't know how it is with you, is usually 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. So a 15-minute hosting set that's a little bit of a climb. You know, I don't know if you've ever had to do longer sets or how comfortable you are with that, but, you know, hitting a place where you're 10 minutes in and you go, oh, that was my closer, and you haven't seen that light yet. I was like, that's not going to be me. If anything else, I'm going to train to go a little bit over this. And then of course for Punchline, you know, you have to be professional. You have to get everyone's name correct. You have to nail the announcements that are before, middle, and after the show. And, you know, ultimately you have to make sure everyone's having a good time because you're the host of the show and that is your hosting audition. And so I did mine. And unfortunately the booker couldn't be there in person for that, but luckily I do video work. So I mic'd the hell out of the room and I put a camera up and I sent it off. And then I went on vacation with my lovely wife to a place called Italy. And I was sitting in this beautiful Italian cafe called Starbucks. And I got the email that said, okay, you passed. And there was a little bit of feedback of, you know, let's switch this around or whatever, but ultimately a good job. And now I get to consider myself a paid regular at the world famous Punchline right here in San Francisco.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's incredible. What a journey. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, and also what a great job you did reminding me of what I wanted to talk about on tonight's show. You're talking about longer sets. I did an hour on Saturday night in Platteville, Wisconsin. Howdy to everybody in Platteville, Wisconsin that isn't tuned in right now because they barely have internet. But the fun thing was driving from Chicago to there. It's like 3.5 hour drive. We passed 4 horse-drawn buggies. Yep. It was Amish country. I've done a lot of comedy shows. I'm doing like 150 to 200 a year. I've yet to drive by a horse-drawn carriage that wasn't like in, you know, New York City, like a tourist thing or New Orleans.
Right.
You know? This was like a real transportation. It was like hailing and they're in open air. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it.
That's awesome. That's unbelievable.
Kind of a small, I guess, I don't know. It was regular for them. It was fun to talk about on stage. Let's talk about lighting real quick, and we got a question, and then we're gonna get out of here. We'll wrap land this plane. I can't even remember why I was gonna ask you about lighting. I was impressed by you.
We had talked about lighting shows, I think, a little bit here and there, and
what's your philosophy on lighting shows, or what kind of equipment do you like? Or,
it's changed over the years. I like to slightly more expensive equipment because I do a lot of video, and I don't like, the cheaper the equipment, the more it's not gonna play well with video cameras. And so, a couple things you want to look out for is you want to make sure you're spending a little bit more money and make sure you're getting lights that are flicker free. You want to make sure you're getting lights that are, you can change the color temperature on, so you're not shooting daylight in a dark environment in a club, and your subject looks like
the right Kelvin? What's the right
tungsten? Yeah, you want like a tungsten, like, or incandescent.
But there's a number.
Kelvin rating,
4,000. What number do you like?
Oof, now you're really getting deep in there. Probably somewhere around 4,000. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Warmer skin tones.
Warmer. Okay. A little more yellow.
Yeah, like I think my lights drive me nuts right now because it keeps color balancing, but this skin tone is kind of what you want. Yeah. And I can tell you where I'm at right now. Oh, let's see if I can figure this out. No.
By the way, while he's doing that, everybody, next week is pre-taped. It's going to be December 23rd, and I don't know where I am, but I'm not available. But we have a bunch of banked episodes, so we're gonna broadcast a pre-taped episode next week. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Nick.
So you want a warmer light, you want to go more incandescent or tungsten, and you also want to do a spotlight. You don't want to flood your stage. You want your comic to sit in the middle of the stage. And then beyond that, hey, if you can get an LED light, that's better, because most comedy clubs have zero air conditioning. And if you're shooting in a beer basement somewhere, you want a light that's not going to generate heat.
Right. Yeah. Or have a loud fan if you're doing.
Or have a tremendously loud fan, or look like you're in an interrogation.
Yes. All right. Here's a question from North Carolina. Nick, can you make do with one decent quality camera, or do you think investing in multiple is worth it?
I think investing in a nice camera for your main shot is good. If you can put up your phone or a slightly lesser camera for a wider angle, so you can get the audience, because let's be honest, you probably want to do like one shot's great for your festival submissions, but if you're pulling clips for social media, you probably want a wider shot or something of the audience. And so just be keeping that in mind. But honestly, I think that 2 cameras is great, with a nice camera and then a slightly lesser camera. But then just think about audio. That's my biggest thing. Is I just hate clips where the comic sounds like he's 30 feet away, because no matter how good the video looks, when the audio sounds like crap, you don't look professional. And so take a zoom up on stage with you if you can. Get a feed from the board whenever possible, so you can get a clean feed of your own voice, and then kind of mic the room so you can get the audience separately. Think about those things like that. Like I went to a show last Saturday, and I asked them just ahead of time. I was like, hey, can I put this H6 on stage with me, and then can I just route the handheld mic through channel 1 and right back out to the speaker, because I have a little breakout box that I can do that with. And it may sound stupid to do that, but he's like, cool. And I go, cool, I'll roll on the audio, and then I'll just give you your audio, so whatever video you have might not look great, but it's going to sound way better than the audio that's on your camera in the back of the room. Just stuff like that. I'm just a dork when it comes to stuff like that, so I like to try and make that work as much as possible.
Well, I think this is a good callback all the way back to what you were saying about running shows being good practice for the future of your career. The stuff you're doing right now, if you, let's say overnight you were selling out improvs around the country or whatever, you're going to want to build a huge social media following and have super high quality video clips, and you're already halfway there. You know what to do. If suddenly one weekend you're making 30 grand and you can go out and buy whatever you want, you're going to know what kind of stuff to buy because you've been practicing. So I think
not only that, but if you're making that much money and you have that experience, you can then either teach someone that experience, like a younger comic who wants to come out on the road with you, or more likely, you can identify people who understand what they're doing. Because if you speak the language and you see other people and someone goes, I'll shoot your show for you, and they get their phone out, you go, no, I'm not paying you money to do that, because you don't know what you're doing in that regard. Like, you can spot a fake from a mile away. I will also say that it's not an uncommon practice, but if you need money and you're running a show, you can always also flirt with the idea of like filming the entire show and then offering comics their clips for like $20 or $10 or whatever, so that could potentially be another stream of revenue for you. And then if you get good at it, you can always offer those services to bigger headliners. And I know people that go out on the road all the time with massive headliners because they're just really good they're great comics and they're great at video and they've got all their own equipment. So They get a call like on a Thursday, and then all of a sudden they're in Washington, D.C. on a Friday filming for like a big headliner with 4 cameras or 3 cameras.
Yeah.
So it's never, and video is never going away. There's never, I don't think social media is going to go anywhere. I think that new technology is here to stay.
Yeah. Quick question. If you had 2 cameras, one of them dead center, what's your ideal angle for the second camera?
I would do for me personally, what I do now is I would film as high a resolution and be as wide enough to get the comic here and then the rest of the audience. Now, of course, your audience's light level is going to be, 5 stops underneath whatever the comic is. So the comic probably is going to be too bright, but I like to get a shot of the entire audience, because if I have a fun crowd moment work, I can just sort of punch in on that. And at least you can see the person. They're going to be a little pixelated, right?
Yep.
But I like shooting with
like back corner of the stage.
I would say back corner, like kind of front facing the audience, and at a side, you don't want to be like dead over the comic, but a nice angle that's out of the way, and don't put it so that the audience can see it, because they do see the camera and they'll clam up. They don't want to talk about anything.
Yeah. So, something I really like about audio, like reaction cameras, what we're talking about basically, is watching it as like analyzing my own set.
Yeah.
You can really watch people and like, oh, they didn't like that dirty joke. They didn't like that dirty. Oh, they like the clean stuff. Oh, this dirty joke, they actually laughed at.
Yeah.
That dirty joke is good enough to get that into, you can like focus on one person and watch them for an entire set and see like what they like and what they don't like and why.
That's interesting. I've never done that. I focus more on just seeing if I can, it's actually trained me to do crowd work to just like the first 3 rows, because they're the ones that are usually most lit.
Right.
But I also have a camera. I'm working on getting a second camera, but I have a camera that shoots at
what do you use?
I use an FX3. And then I have it's a Sony.
Okay.
And the virtue of that camera, that's one of the lines of Sony's that has 2 ISOs. So it's got an 800 ISO, and then it has a 12,800 ISO. And if you set your camera to 12,800 ISO, it pretty much sees in the dark. So you can set it, and then when you're filming the audience, you get them in pretty crystal clear, even if they're like kind of dark. Yeah. And then you can film at a much higher f-stop, so more of the audience is in focus, which is really, really cool. So you can pinpoint people and kind of pull stuff. But ideally, the big headliners will have 3 cameras, maybe 4. You'll have a main camera, a side camera that's wide, and then another camera that literally you'll have someone manning with a telephoto lens and punching in on people. And that's how, if you ever see like a Phil Hanley, for instance, my friend Tim shoots for him, he does a great job of always finding the person that they're talking to. So within 5 seconds, like a second, hey, what did you just say? Whatever. And it'll just cut, and you'll see a little blur, but it'll just be over there, and he'll pinpoint on him. And then that person's going to be, and then they pull great crowd work from that. And it's like being in a comedy club. It's like watching a little mini special every time you log on to his Instagram, and he's blowing up. I mean, Phil's on a different level than anyone. He's hilarious, but lately, because of his great clips on social media, he's just been skyrocketing, and it's super cool to see.
That's amazing. All right, Nick, I got to get out of here. Love your enthusiasm. Love everything. This was great. I hope we get to work together again and chat cameras and nerd out about comedy. And how do people find you if they're looking for it?
You can find me on Instagram at Nick_Scarpino, or you can watch all the stuff I do at youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, where we stream daily from 10 to 3, video games, movies, all sorts of stuff. We play games as well. So you guys can head over there, subscribe to that. And you can also find us on all podcast services. And dude, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's
awesome, man. Stick around for a second. We're going to end this right now for everybody that's live. One more time, next week is pre-taped, and then we'll be back to live stuff the Monday afterwards. Everybody have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, everybody. Kwanzaa, whatever.